You're listening to The People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by footballstadiumprints.com. Let's start the show.
And as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, as Joe Watt stands over this one, he appears to be the one taking the penalty here. This is a huge confidence booster if you're Duluth.
Worst case scenario for City right here.
And it stopped! Yes! And it stopped!
Totally redeems himself.
Matt Elder redeeming himself. Oliver with the right foot. The shot is goal!
Oliver!
Justin Oliver will break the scoreless tie. And it is 1-0 Minneapolis City. Is Hutton now on the offense with the left foot.
Goal!
And it is now 2-0 Minneapolis City.
Good finish.
Nick Hutton taking his quick victory lap.
Coming up for air between some big soccer weeks, this is The People's Pitch, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City SC. As always, I am Nate. Joining me, of course, is my road trip companion, my favorite road trip companion, John Bisworm. John, we're gonna hit
you, man.
Yeah, we have been on a few. We're gonna hit the road in about 18 hours. Are you ready?
No, I am not. My mother-in-law is actually ascending upon us in like 30 minutes. So I have that. I have to clean my car so it's nice and comfortable for you. I also have to do loads of laundry, so I have Minneapolis City apparel to wear, and which is hard to believe because I have so much of it. But you gotta have the right fit. When you're heading back home to Milwaukee, and then I have to sort out a few logistical things for the weekend. And so I am not ready.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm ready.
Good. Yeah.
We're
ready by like 9:30.
Yeah, okay. Well, John, we're full steam ahead into the 2024 season, just like that. And we've got recaps from the U19s, the U21s, and the Super Cup, and previews of the USL2 opener in Milwaukee, and and some upcoming futures action. I don't know how we're going to get to it all. To be honest, we'll probably have to drop some stuff for time, but we'll get started with the big game of the weekend, the Super Cup.
No way, man. We're getting through all of it.
All right, we'll do it.
I don't half-ass it. I whole-ass it, Nate. So, Yes, like you said, let's start with the first game of the weekend, the opening round of the Minnesota Super Cup. If you listened to this here show last week, we covered it quite extensively. So if you wonder what the Super Cup is, go back one more episode, maybe two, and listen to what that is. But the Crows' first test in 2024 came by way of a familiar face in Rochester FC for their former and current USL2 conference foe. Roster-wise, a lot of similar faces. We talked about it last week. So in goal, you had Evan Siefkin. Across the back line, you had Carson Pena. You had the Mario brothers, Nick and Max Kent. And Jonah Garcia shifting from his normal central back spot to right back. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit today. You had Futures U19 coach and returner Scotty Heinen in the midfield with Dennis Mensah and newcomer Juan Moreno. Then out wide, from an attacking perspective, you had player to watch, Bernardo CV Rule. You had Stevie Lamar as a central number 9, and then Futures call-up Camel 2 starting on the left side. And then from a bench perspective, another Futures call-up, Alvaro Arce. He seems to be the guy who is always there in the first round of the Super Cup. You had newcomer Morgan Olson, Joe Highfield, newcomer Siddiqui Jabate. I don't know is that how you say it? Jabate?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Nordo and I got it right then. You had Futures call-up and what seems to be a mainstay now in the first team, Cesar Daniel. And you had returning to the fold, I was hoping for a Vanger, didn't get one. We'll talk about that. Lionel Vang, and then backing up in goal is Daniel Sessler.
Morgan Olson, is he the guy from VMI?
No, he and Joe Highfield both go to Portland together.
Okay.
VMI is Adam Senna,
who
is not yet in yet. I think he's doing tactical training or some shit. I don't know.
Not ready. Well, from the chatter around the grounds, I heard that Minneapolis City came into this game, John, after only one practice session together, which feels pretty typical early season Minneapolis City. And on one hand, you could see it. I think there are a lot of giveaways in the first half. A few players who might have been consistently out of position or not quite where their teammates expected to be. But still, I think the talent shone through, and Minneapolis City pounced on some miscommunication on Rochester's part to go up a goal early.
Mm-hmm.
Camel 2 inserts himself into a loose ball situation between the back line and the midfield. He's able to pop that free. And Juan Moreno steps up with a left-footed shot from distance that skipped into the net just out of the goalkeeper's reach. What a start. What a debut from Juan Moreno. What were your early impressions of both sides?
Well, this is where I slightly disagree with you, Nate. This isn't one of their first times training together. It was the first time that we had probably more than, I'd say, 15 guys. So we had the core of the team training together for probably about 2 weeks. So, nice. which is nice. And I think you saw that come through. I thought that the first 15 minutes of the match was well organized. I thought we were eager to combine. We applied a high line of pressure on Rochester and had a ton of energy, which is what led to that Moreno goal. And what a debut, right?
Yeah.
Like 4 minutes into your debut, living in someone else's house, in a state you've never been in before, like not knowing what to expect. And he just did what he does best, plays good soccer. So yes, it wasn't perfect for either side, but I felt that City had a welcomed foot on the gas to start the match, and it really allowed us to gain that goal advantage instead of falling into our usual trap, Nate, of us being slightly switched off to begin games, having to dig out of a 1 or 2 goal deficit that we've seen for probably 7 years in a row.
Yeah, I mean it's really awesome to have that cushion, and I think we benefited, of course, from some early form in the game, and I also think we benefited from Rochester's, I don't know, probably unfamiliarity with each other as well. Like it, even once we started to give the ball away more and more, it felt like we really couldn't string 2 or 3 passes together for a good chunk of that first half. Once the game really got settled in, but Rochester just was not threatening. It didn't feel like they were threatening
until they weren't doing anything wrong. They just weren't like providing anything of like extreme substance that we had to worry about.
Exactly.
Well, Nate, after City took the 1-0 lead, it was game on in my eyes. But what we then found happened, and this is where we agree, where I agree with you. Things started to kind of come back down to earth a bit. You know, as you mentioned, we started to look a little bit disconnected organizationally. It dropped a bit. Rochester got on the front foot, started to gain the lion's share of possession, and it felt kind of like an eternity, but in reality, it was about 15 to 20 minutes. I went back and watched the game yesterday just to kind of get prepared for today, and I clocked about 15, 17 minutes where it looked like we were going to be in trouble. But that all came to a head when they were given a penalty kick after Evan Siefkin was deemed to have taken down an attacker inside the area. I'm not really sure what time that was in the match. I forgot to write that down.
Yeah, about 20th minute.
But in real time, it looked like the call was correct. But upon the replay, it did show that Evan was doing, his right to equally go for a ball, and the attacker actually had his first touch go well beyond a goal scoring opportunity, in my opinion. And then I thought, was actually the aggressor in the tackle because he collided with Evan. And Evan's legs, like he was already sliding out, and he was, he slid out evenly. There was nothing, like no foot that went first, no arms that hit legs. But whichever way you look at it, the call was made. But Evan stepped up big. He stopped the spot kick. So it's like, all right, cool. We stopped it. Like, all right, continue game on. Only to see a flurry of bodies just flying into the 6-yard box, all jumbled up, which ended in a rebound goal over the line to make it 1-1. And actually, if you do look back, Nick Kent did handle the ball on the goal line when it did cross. So I'm actually glad we gave up the goal and didn't go down to 10 men. So that was good.
That is good.
The rest of the half just kind of sort of played out, and there was no real threat from either side. City was kind of left wondering, I think if they would have kept the energy from that first 15 minutes up, could they have actually started to put this game out of reach a little bit? But, it is what it is, and I thought that, we responded well by not completely unfolding after the goal went in, and I thought that you could tell it kind of pissed the guys off, like, we were on the front foot. We let off the gas. They came back with kind of a weak goal, weak call, and really, I mean, it was, I thought, ours for the taking, even though we went into the halfway at 1-1.
Yeah, I want to make a note on that PK, John. That would be the second penalty that was awarded against Minneapolis City in as many home games, and the second save in as many home games, which is pretty phenomenal. Even though eventually the goal was in off the rebound. That's pretty good record. Pretty good start for the City goalkeeper corner.
Going to start challenging Matt Elder's 83% save percentage.
Yeah. So it's 1-1 at the half. Lots of room for improvement, but City didn't. I say there's lots of room for improvement, but at the same time, City didn't really ever look under pressure, even though they kind of had a tough time holding onto the ball or really building much on the attacking side as the half kind of wore on. Were you like at all worried at this point, or just a little frustrated? Like you said, like we could have kept the foot on the gas and maybe come out a little different at the end of this first half.
I was not worried or frustrated. It was a different look to what would have made me worried or frustrated last season, to be honest. I really think it was just a collective breath to relax, and the squad, they really already shown what the script was for success against Rochester in the early goings, and it was just a matter of them getting back to that. Kind of couple that with the fact that you saw a player like Bernard Asibi-Rule. I mean, he's an attacking threat, but he had to focus primarily playing the other side of the ball because they were sending bodies forward from that outside right side that he was lined up against. So he was doing a really great job. We made him a player to watch. We thought he might get a goal, but in turn, he played just a really solid defensive match. So I knew that there were some game changers on the bench if they were given a run, and they could really help bring the energy back and be threatening. And no disrespect to last year's roster or even the year before. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you agree with me or disagree with me, but sometimes it was like, how are we going to put a body on that's going to actually create change here? And like I said, no disrespect to the guys that were all of all quality, but it just seemed like, okay, we got some guys on the bench that I know Coach Craig can put in, and insert Lionel Vang, insert Siddiqui Diabate along with Morgan Olson and Joe Highfield, and you saw much more of the second half energy that started once those guys came in, and then chances started to be created, and really little to no threat from Rochester at that point, as it was mostly one-way traffic for the whole entire second frame. This leads to the game winner in the 66th minute, I want to say. Somewhere into the second half of the frame, Jonah did a super nice job, and I think that Jonah played extremely well at right back. I thought defensively he locked down his side. I thought he got into the attack a little bit. He and I were kind of joking after the game at the corner bar that he's going to have to work on passing and shooting because he hasn't done that for 6 years.
I was going to say there were a couple times where I'm like, Jonah, take the shot. You're all alone.
Take the shot.
And someone was like, that's not your shot. That's not his shot. That's okay.
So, but he did a great job of reading a passing lane, drives forward, finds new man Siddiqui Diabate in a small pocket of space. And what we talked about on the broadcast, Nordo and I, is that with Stevie Lamar, he's got speed. You're going to want to put him into a little bit of space. With Siddiqui, you don't want to put him into space because he has no interest in tracking down like a 20-yard ball into space. He wants the ball to his foot because of what he can do with it. So gets the ball to his foot in a nice little pocket of space around the 6-yard box, between the 6-yard box and in the penalty spot, turns his defender like 3 ways to Sunday, and then unleashes a cannon blast that I think lifted the goal off of its bearings, right through the ear hole of the goalkeeper, and that it was kind of like at that point, could we get another goal? Potentially. However, I think it was the collective breath had gone out, and it was like, all right, let's calm down. Let's lock this up. Let's do what we need to do to get our first W of the season.
Yeah, we had only about 20 minutes left to play at that point, and I think that was, given the threats or the lack thereof that Rochester was moving forward with, I think that was a good move. I want to just double down on your point that like Jonah looked really good at right back at first. It's not a position we had seen him play at in the past. He's always been a center back ever since he made his debut. But I think just really smart, really, I would say, added like that veteran wiliness to the play. And you could tell that he was helping direct on couple levels. You know, he was helping to direct the back line to make sure that Nick was in the spot that he needed to be, but then also he was helping to direct. First Camel was in front of him, and then when
Dennis,
and then when Dennis went in, I think Jonah was a great general in that position, which is not really where you get that. I mean, that's what you don't really get direction on the field coming from your right back traditionally, because they're so worried about getting up and down and up and down. But I think Jonah was able to not only find himself in great spaces, but make sure that other people were in the right place. And eventually, once it started to click, and once everyone got on the same page and figured out where Jonah was going to be and where he expected you to be, that's where you saw, like, boom, the goal happened. Jonah had tons of space. Siddique was able to make that turn. Just a really interesting move from Carl that might have just been a roster decision based on depth, but I think it looks great. It's a good option moving forward for City.
The only thing we have to worry about is when the other team poses a speedy threat on the left side. And that's not to disrespect Jonah by any means, but Jonah is not traditionally built for foot races between fast swingers. No. So he has to use his brain. He has to outthink them. And he did that. And I didn't think that they threw anyone that was ridiculously quick at him. But that's where the roster build up for this season. We have younger, quicker outside backs that could combat something like that. So from a strategy perspective, Carl has options. But my final thoughts on this one are pretty easy. It felt like a really great first foot forward for the players, but also I thought it was a great chess game for Coach Craig. I thought his setup was spot on, given the personnel that he had. The substitutions were on point, and we already talked about the energy that they brought when they came in. They combined for a new man comes on, scores a goal, and everything that needed to change happened. And ultimately, they saw the game out. There were lots of things I think to take away from the game for this team, and the inclusion of further quality coming into the team. I feel like it's going to be a really fun group to watch this summer.
Yeah, 100%. It's we didn't get any indication that Rochester was waiting for any talent to arrive, right? Yeah. I think this wasn't their UPSL team filling some gaps. So it's nice to see that we're not necessarily waiting for our college talent to come back and be competitive in this USL2 division.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, up next for the USL2 team, we're going to take a road trip to Milwaukee tomorrow. We already mentioned that. John and I are very, very excited for the season opener against the Bavarians. The first of 3 games this summer against your ancestral team, John. The Bavarians had a tough season last year, learning, just like we did in our first season, that the USL2 is definitely a step up. John, what do your sources tell you about how they've planned to adapt this year?
Well, let me put it this way. The Bavarians are not accustomed to winning and not accustomed to finishing last place in any league, and will and I bet have immediately addressed the situation and will come back stronger. It's just who they are, what they do. I felt that last year they were at a little bit of an impasse, like we were when we first joined the USL2. Coming off some really successful seasons in their previous league. We did it in the MPSL. They were doing it in the UPSL. And in their state league, and they had some legacy players that were overage, but perhaps better from a competitive standpoint than the younger options that they actually rostered due to the age restrictions. So we kind of had that impasse for us, and then we had those guys playing on an NPSL team, and then there was weird fluctuation. Everything just kind of went sideways. But I think that's kind of what happened to them. That happens. We went through the transition. Totally get it. Also, the fact that this league in the USL2, you mentioned it, the margins are so thin. Every one team can really play and has talent, which is what makes it such a good spot to be in if you're really trying to develop players for the next level. But I feel like the ball didn't really bounce their way a lot last year, including in the matches that we played against them in, and they were not a last place in the conference team, in my opinion. They just didn't really have it together. Kind of some growing pains, but they had some really quality players. As I look at the roster this year, there are a handful of players that are returning. Some of the names that I was hoping would not return are not returning, then have actually gone on to other USL teams. So that's a positive. But the rest of the team, it does have a little bit of a different look from last season. And to me, that spells that they've identified what they feel they need to do to course correct and are setting themselves up for a better run at things. But also, like we learned, sometimes in the USL, it's less about what you are doing and more about what the other teams are doing to level up. I mean, look at what we saw with Racine. Like, we really didn't know what Racine was, and then they came out and we're like, holy shit, these guys can play. So I think that they did what they're going to do. I will also note, kind of my last note here on them, is that there's a lot of 19-year-olds on the roster. So is it a decision to have a youth movement, and perhaps they're kind of leaning more on setting up a framework for a really experienced team for years to come? Who knows? Or they decided, like, these kids can ball, we're just going to give them the platform. So I definitely wanted to point that one out.
Yeah, that was kind of my question, John. Is you think Bavarians are going to move in the direction where they're still leaning on the homegrown Bavarian talent, or do they do a lot more recruiting from the Milwaukee college teams?
A mix of both, actually.
Okay.
Their former standout, Kyle Zanoni, who's now the head coach at UMass Lowell, saw a lot of UMass Lowell on their roster. So potentially there's the connection from a few players.
We had a goalkeeper from UMass Lowell for a second, didn't we?
I don't remember. No, straight UMass.
Okay.
Yeah. So
nice.
UMass Heil, not Lowell.
Well, we're going to find out tomorrow night. The game begins at 7 p.m. at the Bavarian Soccer Club complex. If you're making the trip, get there early because that beer hall is a great time. Tickets are $10, and it's going to be cash only at the door, so make sure you're ready for that, fans.
And you can buy beers at the concession stand with cash only. So
yeah,
the party doesn't have to stop.
Yeah, bring that cash, make it rain. Next up, we had a Mother's Day tilt on Sunday. The U19s welcomed Bateau FC from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Starters in that match, Daniel Sessler again starting between the sticks for the U19s. Defenders were Ethan Brown, Ike Duell. Miles Redmond and Reese Tidwell were inserted into the mix. Two Wyzetta boys, I believe. Midfielder of Ronan Selbo was a little bit of a deep-sitting midfielder. In front of him was Cy Friesen again, and in front of him was Jabari. And forwards were Ethan Lemoyne, Axel Martin, and Colin Vilm. So pretty similar to the starting rotation of the first team. Couple new boys on defense. Probably had to do with some availability and some injuries. And then Ronan Selbo in that number 6 position. He's pretty good. So it's good to have him. I think he's an 0506 MTA guy. John, I'm going to say we can get through this game pretty quickly because I'll say not much was going on in the first half outside of I saw two teams trying to figure each other out. I saw the veterans of Bateau that realized they might be playing at a little bit different level than they're used to in the old Wisconsin Amateur Premier Soccer League or whatever it's called.
Primary.
Primary. Yep. Soccer league, trying to figure out like, oh, what's going on in this league? Who are these kids? And I think you had some 16, 17, 18-year-old guys trying to figure out like, what do I do against this 27-year-old center back?
But that's what we knew, right? That's what we knew this league was going to be.
Exactly what we wanted, for these guys. And I think that's the value prop of the U19 team for them anyway, is to be like, you're going to be out there against a wide variety of players that really know the game, have played at a different level, and you're just going to have to be able to adapt week to week. And I think the guys adapted pretty well. They were still really well connected. I think, Ethan Brown especially is really impressive on that side, as is Axel Martin up top. Ethan brings some speed and he's able to defend, but he's also really willing to get forward from his fullback side. Axel does such a good job of holding up play and finding, and just the like little flick-ons, the like one touches that he does that land right in the line of a runner. I don't know how he does it. It's like it's one of those skills that's like, I don't understand, just like how hockey players can flick the puck at 100 miles an hour into the net, like deflect the puck. So, like I said, though, not much in that first half outside of two teams trying to figure each other out. It's 0-0 at halftime. And as we come out, some changes are made. And it was Hudson Benitez that came in for, I believe, Ethan Lemoyne on the right side, and he had an immediate impact.
Mm-hmm.
We talked, Huddy played with the U21s this winter during the Futures Winter League. We talked to him in an interview a few episodes back. Just a really sharp kid, and I think he knew what he needed to do right away, and he just drove right at that left back. He was terrorizing him pretty much his whole shift. But I mean, it was very effective early, and Huddy gets the boys on the board early in the second half, and then a lot of the second half after that was Minneapolis City continuing to threaten. Brown down one side, Huddy down the other, until third time in 3 home games, we get a penalty called against us. Which, that's 3 across all teams, and I'll say we weren't done yet for the weekend. We'll talk about that.
Actually,
in the next
it's 4.
Well, yeah, because there's another one.
We're going to talk about one here in a
There's
bit.
another one coming up. So I think we're 4 for 4 for every home game. There's been a penalty called against us, which is awesome. But in this case, it was for a handball against I believe it was Tidwell, number 60. Hard to see it. It was really disappointing to get that call. Felt like his hands were in on his body, but and his back was to the booth, so I couldn't really see what was going on in front of him where his hands were. So, Like I said, it wasn't super blatant, but it was. I mean, if it was a handball, it was in the box.
Right.
And the Bateau player stepped up and converted. Sessler could not save one this time around. So very disappointing to lose 2 points, but in the end, 1-1 is a good result against a team like Bateau. One thing these boys are going to have to figure out, John, is how different it's going to be asked to come in and make an impact on the game. I think I saw that in the second half. Like, we had some opportunities to push for that goal because Bateau were not really on the front foot at any time. They were defending and absorbing kind of waves of attack from Hudson, from Colin,
Jabari.
and Jabari and Axel. But once you start moving the subs in, you could tell some of these guys aren't used to being needed to operate in a more forward role or at a more urgent pace. They're used to just coming in and doing their job, right? So how do you mentally get ready to come in, make that impact on the game, and try to shift, try to push the momentum further in your favor?
Yeah.
But go ahead. And I don't know, you have a response to that, or did you say the same thing? Did you say the same thing?
I'll add during my segment.
I will say, these U19s, they've stood tall against what pretty much amounted to the Joy Athletic first team, and they've stood tall against a very experienced, well-connected, like, these players knew each other, they know each other very well, and they're much older, Bateau FC. So even though they're still looking for their first win, you got to believe it's coming, and I think they're going to be something to watch in this Premier Division.
Well, what I was going to add while you were talking is we pushed aside the fact that they had a goal called back for offside. The Futures did, and I looked at that as much as I could on the stream, and I did not see an offside situation. In fact, I saw the fact that the referee was actually 10 yards out of position, but lifted the flag up. So this game could have been 2-1, and they could have gotten their first W. But results aside, I still think the start of the season can be deemed positive for this group. There are flashes of what they're capable of, and it's just not been strung together for large portions of the 2 matches. And that might go back to your comment about, like, these guys are young and they haven't had to figure out in their soccer journey that impact needs to happen right away when you do come off a bench, or you have to get going right away instead of, like, being in the game for longer because you're used to starting at your level that you came from.
Exactly.
So I think that one could potentially be part of it. But what they're doing is they're responding well after they maybe get scored on. They're pouncing on the missteps from their opposition. And I think that they're right where they need to be in terms of progression. And I think they're going to make some noise as the summer progresses. I really do.
Yeah, I agree. Finally, for the last game in a packed week, the U21s welcomed St. Croix Legends 2 on Wednesday night. John, you and I missed the U21 season opener on Saturday because of the Super Cup. So this was a really great opportunity to see the team in action after the winter sessions. They've been playing together since January, some of them earlier than that, as they were probably in, like, November camp, December camp. And even a lot of these guys, same faces as last year's U21 team. So this is, if you talk about a team that has been a core of guys for a little bit longer than some of our other rosters, it's this one. Your goalkeeper was Gabe Kuffel, which was good to see him get some minutes. I know he's getting a couple minutes there at the end of his Xavier season, and he got really none with Minneapolis City last year. So it's good to see him out there. Defenders were Sam Kading, who, by the way, was super impressive. Yeah. I really liked watching him at right back. Our guy Rigo Ariano, who again on the team last summer, and was really, really good. He's a Hamlin guy now, and he's just getting better and better every year. He was right next to Jeffrey Richter, who is an Augsburg player, and Eli Duke on the left side is from Bethel. Midfielders were Johnny Bear. Mitchell Munzing was the attacking midfielder, and Joe Swallen was kind of the 8, kind of floating around. And then up top, you had a forward line of Camel 2, making his second appearance this week, along with Misael Harris from Augsburg, and his Augsburg battery mate, Tomas Mena, was the captain for the night. I think, John, what we saw from St. Croix was different than what we've been seeing roster-wise on social media. Mm-hmm. And I think this is going to be the look of St. Croix going forward as their first team pivots to focus on USL2. The first team players that I did see out there, I think Carter Thiesfield was the USL2 players, I should say, that I did see out there. I think it was just Carter Thiesfield,
Gora,
and everyone else.
And
Gora, and maybe Preston. But Will started on the bench, and Ramsey started on the bench, right, too?
Correct. Yep.
So I think a lot of these guys are starting to fade out and be ready for USL2 competition, which starts for them tomorrow as well. So still a competitive roster, but I think after watching them this week, we definitely should be more worried about they should be worried about Blackhawks and maybe Vlora. I think the top 4 from last year are still going to be the top 4 this year.
I think top down the division is going to be strong no matter who we play, to be honest with you. You do
except
have
for Granite City.
You do, except for Granite City, yeah. But we did have a little bit of feedback on our well, actually, it was your old granddad rant, and I just agreed with you about.
I'll take the heat for that.
Yeah. Take the heat, and then I had to deal with it. Thanks a lot, Nate. No, but we talked, just for context, we talked about the fact that there were 2 teams that we've seen that we have experience with in St. Croix and Joy of the People, or Joy Athletic, whatever you want to call them, that it truly was some first team players dropping down, banging goals in, and we challenged the idea of the youth movement and really segmenting out rosters for those 2 organizations. I did get a note kind of explaining things from our old friend Justin Oliver, former Crow, current head coach and national champion winner at St. Olaf, and a member of the coaching staff over at St. Croix. So I did want to address some of the things that he mentioned, because it was equal parts him understanding part of our show is to talk shit, right? But part of it is to generate storylines and informs people of what we're seeing. So sometimes it doesn't land right, and that's okay. But when we do get information coming the other direction, we have it's our honest opinion that we want to share that as well. So that's what we're going to do. Before I do that, I will note no one from Joy reached out to us, and I still think that they are running 1 team in 2 leagues, and I hope they felt really good about beating a group of 16, 17-year-olds. Anyways, so Justin did inform us that that truly what we saw was kind of some early season stuff. And we did note that could be the situation. But it truly is a situation where they're getting some guys coming back from college, and we actually have the luxury, Nate, of having more in-town players to be able to field 3 separate teams. So that's a luxury we have. And I do want to run back my comments that I now understand that that's not the situation for everybody. So I do get that. So part of it, they needed to field players on rosters, and I totally get that. Part of it too was the fact that this is some of their preseason to get their guys going from college that are back in. And just because they performed and you see Nathan Donovan score 4 goals, that doesn't mean that St. Croix is stacking their roster with a guy who can score 4 goals. They want to get him some minutes. Totally get
Sure.
that as well.
Mhm.
And then the final point was that Justin talked about is that when he kind of explained some things to me, it did make sense that they do have a plan to integrate youth players. And it's a matter of getting them in. And we've seen that from a youth perspective, like our ECNL connected boys are hard to get sometimes because they do have another focus. So again, a lot of things that we're seeing and that we're integrating as well. But he did mention the fact that the youth movement is going the other way, and that there are a handful of homegrown players who are getting minutes upwards. That are their goal is to play on the UPSL team, but they are rostered and training with the first team. So wanted to mention those things. Thank you, Justin, for connecting with us and not wanting to burn the house down, but providing like actual contextual details for us to correct ourselves. So appreciate that.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's a matter of correcting ourselves either, John. Like, I think, for me, I think you're right. First of all, it's an important point to say, like, part of our job is to create narratives around the season. And that was just one that we saw. Is like, this was a trend early in the season in both the Premier and Division One. Is like, what are these guys doing out there? And it's good. But also, I will say that, like, it's from an organization like St. Croix, it was probably, if I'm honest with myself, it was my view that was probably what they were doing, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get guys minutes early. It's good to get them to play together early and get them ramped up for the UP or the USL2 season. So
absolutely
can't fault you for that. It is what it is. And I think you're right that Minneapolis City is especially blessed to have about 100 guys
right
that we can field across three teams in the moment.
So let's retraction printed on the back page.
Let's get to the game. From the jump, the U21 team was organized. It was well connected. They were ready to press the back three of St. Croix. Mitchell Munzing found himself 1v1 against the keeper so early, only to have his shot saved. And I thought, oh man, I hope we get more of those. And we did. He found himself in another dangerous situation really quickly, buried the first City goal at the 10-minute mark. Another quick start for a Minneapolis City team. And I was like, and you just felt like there was more to come.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And there was. His Augsburg teammate, Tomas Mena, opened his 2024 account 8 minutes later. And then that's when it felt like the floodgates were opened. Munzing added a second at 21, and former Augie Camel 2, familiar playing at Edor Nelson Field, added the fourth goal at 28 minutes. John, when you watched this game, what were you seeing that these guys were exploiting? Like 4 goals within less than a half an hour. We haven't seen that.
Honestly, it went down to the active movement of the front four. So Harris, to Mena, and Munzing. Like they were so active and consistently switching up the areas of attack with their runs, and it was causing fits for the back line of St. Croix. And it wasn't necessarily a quality issue because I thought that St. Croix's back line eventually did settle in, but it was the setup of Coach Roy starting out with high pressure and just the activity that I saw was something that St. Croix couldn't handle right off the bat.
Yeah. St. Croix battled back though. They got a goal in the 31st off a set piece, and then Gora struck a well-placed curler into the upper right to make it 4-2. I wasn't sure if that was a attempted cross or just a really nice shot, but if it was a shot, it was inch perfect. And he looks pretty threatening for them. He's a Liberty University student down in the Big South, I believe, and it was 4-2. And it was okay. Yeah, it was like, okay, well, I'm comfortable 4-2 as we go into halftime. But second half started, and it was all St. Croix to start. They were, I don't know what they were drinking in over there on the bench between halves, but they came out swinging, and they earned another penalty, which is 4 penalties called against Minneapolis City in 4 home games. And I think that could have truly swung the momentum in their direction and really put them on the front foot. But that ball was skied. And City sighed a sigh of relief.
Yeah, it wasn't close. No disrespect to the spot kick taker, but something happened where that thing went well over the bar.
Yeah. Yep. But Liberty's Gora strikes again, and suddenly it's 4-3. And I know this is going to sound crazy, John, but all those goals, the 3 goals from St. Croix, felt against the run of play. I mean, is that a crazy thing to say? Like, yeah, I know they scored 3, but they probably shouldn't have.
I mean, I wouldn't say shouldn't have. I thought that, whether it was a cross or a shot on Gora's first goal, no one will know except for himself. But like you said, it was well placed. So, and I thought that they were. It was more of a case of not that they shouldn't have happened, but they were avoidable. Mm-hmm. If you even include the penalty going over, that it could have easily been 4-4. And I don't forget which coach it was on the City sidelines, right underneath the camera, which was like yelling to the guys, like, that was a gift that guy had a misstep and missed the penalty. Like, we have got to get back to doing what we do best, or what we've been doing. And so I don't necessarily agree with you that like it should have happened, but they were clearly avoidable.
Yeah. And maybe I feel like they were against the run of play because City had 3 or 4 other chances that were either 1v1 or
just
2v2 that were just like, it's just so like we could have had so many more goals in this game if the ball fell a little differently. And so that's maybe why I'm thinking like, God, these 3 goals, it's not, you don't want 3 goals scored against you ever, but they all felt against the way the game was flowing. And I'll give it to the legends, John. It wasn't the 3rd goal that did them in. It wasn't the 4th goal. No, it was the 5th goal scored against them that finally, I think, took the fight out of them. Mm-hmm. Mena got his brace in the 64th minute, and then it was lockdown time for City. And I think St. Croix had a real hard time pushing for that, pushing to dig out of that 2-goal deficit with, 25 left.
I thought where it went wrong for St. Croix, and not necessarily they gave up fight, but they completely started to bypass the midfield. So it made it super easy for City to sit back and just to like collect long balls, looking at them instead of running onto them. So it was a lot of back line to front line for St. Croix. And then when City would do the cleanup work, then it was clock killing time because they had space for days in the central part of the field. Like there were so many times where I'm watching this game and like Joe Swellen is just sitting on a ball in the middle of the field and there's no black shirt coming anywhere near him. And he just kind of like lazily, not that he was being lazy with the ball, but like very calmly just kind of like moving the ball side to side and eating some clock. And I thought that if St. Croix could have continued to connect through the middle, which was starting to get dangerous for them, and then that was springing the runs for players like Gora, then you saw what he could do with it. It just kind of went to more like get the ball forward. We got to try to make up a deficit here. But when that 5th goal went in, I think that it wasn't lost a fight. It was just kind of an exhale and like, all right, well now what? Well, now what are we going to do?
Yep. And so 5-3 was the final. St. Croix did make some changes. They put Ramsey Orokondo in to replace one of their back 3 to add a little speed on the edge of that back.
Towards the end of the game.
Yep. And then he moved up top. But I think he was good to add a little speed around the edge where Munzing was beating that guy consistently, along with, like you said, that combo of Harris and 2. Final thought is that it was just weird to see Will Kidd out there. Like Ramsey played for us for a year. Will Kidd played for us for so long. City's all-time leading scorer was, unfortunately for maybe him or for a fan of Will that wanted to see him get in on the action, unfortunately deployed as a left back primarily. Mm-hmm. I think he had a secondary role of maybe getting forward and supporting the attack and getting dangerous where he could. But really it was by the end, St. Croix was going with 4 in the back. And Will was just kind of out there defending, which is too bad.
Yeah, like I said, it was 4 in the back and 4
really
up top. And you would think that someone with Will's skill sets to be able to break down people one-on-one, like you want to find him to his feet. We've seen it many times, whether it's combining with people, going solo, drawing penalties. Like he just did it for years for us. And I agree with you. It wasn't like sad to see, but it was like, man, I would have loved to take the win and see Will Kidd score. Honestly, like that would have been like a good day for me.
Yep. So how do you feel like the game overall went for us, went for St. Croix, and what's this say about the Premier Division in the UPSL?
So I'm going to focus less on what St. Croix did or did not do and focus more on City for my take on this one. I think Coach Roy had this squad so well trained in all three phases. And it's weird to say when you give up 3 goals, but like we said, they were avoidable goals and those are things you can clean up. I think that the ones that they did concede were on the back of a few mental errors and then one deflection. So It's like, take the deflection out, maybe you substitute that for the penalty, still avoidable goals. Outside of that, I think the ball moves extremely well. Like the continuity of the returners on this roster mixed with, the handful of the Augsburg group that's played together for 2 years in school. And in some cases they grew up together playing club soccer. I thought that they looked well organized defensively, maybe not the entire match. Like I said, you have 3 goals. I think I'm crazy by saying this, but I thought that they were in the right spots for the majority of the game, applying really good pressure. And they have the ability to score goals from so many different positions on the field. I think and you saw that when like Carter Hermanson came on and Jordan Ross came on, like last year it was like, let's hope those guys can produce something solo on their own. But the goals kind of came at this season collectively as a group by moving the ball around and interchanging positions. So really, really bright spots there. Super deep with talent. And I think, again, like I said with the 19, early indicators are looking at another run to the top of the conference for the Crows. I really do. So the 21s are away in Austin. That's Austin, Minnesota, not Austin, Massachusetts. No, they're battling Austin Villa, which, again, playing the name game, they win. But they'll be back next Saturday for the 25th for a home game that we played at Braemar in Edina next to Champions Hall. So definitely come out to that one. And I believe tickets for that one are free because we can't gate it. So regardless, if it's free or if it comes with a charge, I think you really got to come check out the 21s. We've said it before, you got to check out the 19s. I think that like if you have the time in your life and it's not busy, come check out these teams. They're fun to watch, man.
What are you doing with your life if you're not just watching Minneapolis City 3 days a week?
Life on top of my kids playing 3 days a week. Like it's really anyways, that'll do it for this week's show. 45 minutes. We got it all done, Nate. See? We did it. So thank you to our wonderful show sponsor, footballstadiumprints.com. Our friends over at footballstadiumprints.com are always expanding their soccer-focused designs, prints, and more. Don't forget to use the code CROWS10. That's CROWS10 for 10% off of everything you purchase. Actually, I'm wearing my Eeyore Nelson Field shirt right now. And remember, all U.S. orders ship right from these United States, so there are no pesky international shipping charges. And as a reminder, Minneapolis City is a 501c3, so you can feel really good about membership as it doubles as a charitable donation to the club that loves to do good. Memberships for 2024 season are still on sale and available, so don't wait any longer to snag your seat in the stands and get some sweet swag for the price that destroys other clubs' price of entry. Head on over to mplscitysc.com and get yours today. And remember, you can always find us on Twitter X. You can text me like Justin Oliver did. I'm not going to give you my phone number because that would be dumb. Or you can hit us up on Twitter X at The People's Pitch. We're now on Instagram at People's Pitch Podcast, so check us out there. And you can even email us if you have any questions or topics you would want us to cover on the show, mcscpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, you can always connect with the club on Twitter X at MPLSCitySC. So that will do it for this week's show, folks. I'm John. That's Nate. The soccer content is still pouring in, so we'll be back next week with more match recaps and previews, which seems to be our summer. Recap, preview. But we'll try to sprinkle in some more soccer content in there as well. So much soccer, and we will see you all in the Brew City. And, of course, you got hoofed.
Get hoofed.